Hey, my name is Forrest, welcome back. So I wanted to make this video not only for the programmers out there who feel like maybe you aren't being as productive as you think you should, maybe you scroll on YouTube when you should be working, but also for the folks who work with developers and manage developers, because y'all are the biggest destroyers of developer productivity I've ever seen. So I'm going to plead with you throughout this video on behalf of all developers. Watch it through, listen to what I have to say. Your developers will thank you. And in this video, I'm going to be as detailed as possible while also being as brief as possible so you can absorb all of this information and implement it immediately by getting the heck off YouTube after watching this video and leaving a like, of course. So here are some ways to absolutely demolish your productivity that you should probably avoid. Notifications. They're designed quite literally to distract you and get you to focus on whatever information it's notifying you about. And y'all know I like to code in 4-hour ultra high focus code blocks with zero distractions. So to maintain focus while coding, check everything you need to beforehand. Email, Slack, Twitter, text, phone calls, PRs, whatever. If you need to check these things before you start coding, do it. If you don't need to, then don't do it. And I specify that because if you are checking all of these, but you don't need to, but you kind of want to ease into the day, well, you're going to be thinking of all of this. At least it's going to be at top of mind as you're going into your coding session, and it may allow for a distraction. And the reason you check in the first place is because you're going to want to turn off all non-essential notifications. You hear that, managers? If we're coding, we ain't paying attention to Slack. I'll get back to you at lunchtime or something. And I specify non-essential notifications because I no longer just turn off all notifications and go in do not disturb mode. Because when my wife and kids are out of the house, I quite literally leave my phone on ringer right here in the event of an emergency. If I get interrupted, I get interrupted. Not a problem in this case. So just remember, not every ping needs an immediate response, and managers don't expect one. Now, you see these two monitors right here? Oftentimes, this second monitor is for a YouTube video, or maybe a live stream or something like that. But contrary to what you may believe, you can't multitask. I hate to break it to you, but you can't. Not when you're doing deep coding work. And if you actually can, prove it. Prove it and teach me, please. Look, if I'm responding to emails or doing something simple, like a simple mundane task, then sure, I'll have a YouTube video running on the second monitor, but not when I'm coding. So do not multitask. Instead, focus on one task at a time. And also don't be the person who hops from task to task without completing the first one, which is kind of what I do. It's a bad habit that I'm trying to break. It's just like, oh, shiny, let me work on this over here. Anyway, quality over quantity. It's better to complete one task well than juggle multiple poorly. Oh, it's like poetry. Okay. Procrastination. We've all been there. There's a looming deadline and all of a sudden everything else becomes much more appealing. And I have a bad habit of doing something I call productive procrastination, because it's one thing, just sitting here and scrolling social media. You know you're getting nothing done. But it's a whole nother thing to look around and say, I've been meaning to clean my office, and it's something that's got to get done, so I guess I'll do it right now. So that's what you do. And then as you're throwing something away, you see some dishes in the sink. Oh, so you do all the dishes in the sink. And then you look at your dog right there. Oh, I got to take the dog for a walk. So you take the dog for a walk. And then you walk in the house and then the door squeaks. You're like, man, I really need to fix that squeaky door. And you do that too. And suddenly it's the end of the day and you look around and you're like, man, I am awesome. Look at all this work I got done. But now your deadline is one day closer and you got none of the work that you needed to get done today. The work that was supposed to be number one priority, and now you're putting yourself in an even worse position tomorrow, more overwhelming position tomorrow. Anyway, so to combat procrastination, oh, and by the way, you see these stickers? No, I'm not 12 years old. This back of the screen is cracking because I drop it like that, but the sticker's on there so the glass wouldn't go anywhere. Anyway, team no case. Procrastination, to combat it, the number one thing is just to get started. I know, easier said than done, but it's not as hard or as daunting as you have made it seem in your mind. And if it is, well, then you're really going to need as much time as possible to dive into this and really figure it out. If you really don't know where to start, well, take this big project, whatever you got to work on, and just break it into smaller chunks. You've heard it 1,000 times, but that is the best way to do it. And then whatever chunk comes first, that's how you start. And for each work session, to make it more clear and manageable, set achievable goals for your work. Just 1 or 2, and then if you have more time afterwards, you can add on beyond that. But you don't want to add 10 things that you got to get done today or in this window, this time frame, because then you'll just overwhelm yourself and then, well, wow, this office needs to get clean. That's how that starts. Remember, starting is the hardest part, but once you begin, it's easier to keep going. Meetings. Meetings suck, and most aren't even necessary.
I don't have time for this, guys. Just give them back their spaces.
Okay.
We good? Okay. Could have done this over email.
But annoyingly so, some meetings are mandatory for no other reason than to make a manager feel like they're being productive because their entire calendar is booked with meetings, which could have been emails. But then what else would they do with the remaining 7.5 hours of their day? Work? I don't think so. Listen, if it's in your power, or if you're a manager watching this, and it is in your power, question if a meeting is truly necessary. Could it just be an email? Probably. And how about we only have meetings at very specific windows during the day? Don't give me one right in the morning, and then one right before lunch, and then one right in the middle of the afternoon. That's 3 meetings in the day, and I only am able to sit down and actually get deep work done for an hour, or depending on how long these meetings are, even less. Put those 3 meetings into a single window. I know you're worried about all these other people. You have all these people in the meeting. Well, guess what? Make sure that only the people, only essential people are in the meeting. Only people that need to be there, please. And also, limit the meeting duration. We don't want to sit here for an hour blabbering and then hear the next day about how little we got done the day before. What? We're in 5 hours worth of meetings. When am I supposed to get work done? Your time is valuable. Use it wisely. Speaking of meetings and productivity, let's talk about today's sponsor, the Loupedeck Live, because it's a customizable console that effectively serves as a mission control for your workspace. You're in and out of Zoom and Gmail and VS Code and Photoshop and Notion and Spotify and a litany of other apps and programs that when you Alt-Tab, you can't find what in the world you're looking for. Well, Loupedeck Live solves that. With its powerful interface, you can control your apps, command any function, and create macros to streamline everything. It's typically marketed towards content creators for editing videos or streaming. I use it for both, but I've also found it very valuable in my coding workflow. You can set up macros for repetitive coding tasks, running in debug, database queries, or even typing out common Git commands because you're just too lazy to type them out yourself every time. Or use it to quickly switch between code and docs and Stack Overflow or Claude 3.5 Sonnet. You can create custom profiles for any application, assigning shortcuts, macros, and commands to these tactile controls. In dynamic mode, automatically switches profiles based on your active app. It's so efficient, you might actually get some work done. So whether you're streaming your coding sessions on Twitch or just in a Zoom meeting, or just want to improve your workflow, the Loupedeck Live may be worth a look. Check out the link in the description to learn more. Now here's one many of you don't have to worry about: perfectionism. Sorry, just y'all catching strays over here. Listen, while attention to detail is important, perfectionism, trying to be perfect, can be paralyzing. It's okay for you to have to change the code that you wrote after a code review. That is perfectly fine. Don't spend 3 hours on a 1-hour task trying to guess what the person reviewing your code is going to say about your code. Because instead, you could have spent an hour coding it, submitted it for code review, and then gone back into it and made the fix that somebody already identified specifically in 15 minutes. So instead, in order to combat this, because just like all of this, it's easier said than done, set realistic standards and embrace iterative improvement, just little by little. It's fine. And remember that done is better than perfect. And here's the thing: the more you're exposed to needing to refactor some code based on what somebody said in the code review, or you forgot to write a test over here, so that's what you do. The more you're exposed to that, the more you do it, the better you're going to get. So the better you get, you're going to get to a point where eventually your done is better than what your perfect would have been. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. Perfection is a journey, not a destination. Ship your work and improve over time. But you can't do any of this, any of what I just said, if you are dog tired. You're sitting at a computer, for goodness sakes. I mean, it's one thing if you were outside and you were building a fence and you could just trudge along regardless of how tired you are and get it done. But this, you're trying to solve complex problems by diving deep into your brain in order to figure it all out and then implementing it? Well, if you're tired, that ain't going to work. Unless you're doing a little something else, which I highly do not recommend. Never done it, but I think it's pretty obvious. Anti-recommendation. What's the opposite of recommendation? I'm sure there's a word for it. But I mean, really, like, contrary to the whole like hustle culture, the more you work, the more you get done. You need your sleep. And it's not just sleep, it's just rest overall. Rest overall is crucial if you want to actually be productive and get like the best work done. And also if you want to sustain it instead of just having short bursts all the time. So prioritize overall, just your overall well-being. And I have a little bit of advice, things that I've tried to figure out over the years, and I think I've mostly got it dialed. Some days, some days or whatever, but you got to figure out what times you get the best sleep. For me, it's about 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'm one of those people who needs like a solid 8 hours. I can get away with 7 sometimes, but 7 to 8 hours of solid sleep to operate properly. So I aim for a 9-hour sleep window every night because I know something or someone is going to wake me up in the middle of the night. Dog, kids, maybe I just got to pee. And also, a healthy body allows for a healthy mind. Maintain physical health to maintain mental health. So exercise, walk, run, lift weights. You don't got to go 110% all the time. In fact, I recommend against that because then you're going to be very tired and very sore, and it's going to be a few days later and you're going to be like, well, I'm more tired than I was before I worked out. Go into it easy. Just get the body moving. You'll thank me later. And also drink a bunch of water because if you are dehydrated, it is difficult to focus. I promise you that. Speaking of which. And remember this one thing because it's very important. People tend to forget it. Rest isn't laziness. It's essential. And also remember, scrolling on social media, wherever my phone is on the ground, scrolling through social media is not resting. Now, some real code-specific ways to destroy productivity. Bad documentation, because why write good documentation when you can write bad documentation and just have the next guy, or maybe that next guy be you, spend an hour or two trying to figure out what the heck's going on. Good documentation saves time and headaches, lots of headaches, in the long run. Your future self and your team will thank you. So make sure you avoid these common pitfalls. A lot of it is basic. You probably have heard it 1,000 times, but it's always nice to be reminded of some of these things. I know I need it. So just stay on top of it, keep it top of mind, and your productivity will go through the roof. Maybe. I don't know. No guarantees. Don't sue me. And if nothing else, just remember this one thing. Productivity isn't about working longer hours. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. It's about being more efficient with your time, being more purposeful with your time. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and may your code always compile on the first try. Now get the heck off YouTube and get to work.